Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to do a talk between three generations of cricket lovers. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So today we are going to talk through three generations of cricket, and my dad's going to be the moderator and ask the questions, and we have to debate on it. So without further ado, let's start, and I give my proceedings to my dad.
So since no cricket is being played, I thought the next best thing we can do is actually chat about cricket. And I thought Aryan came up with a great idea to do this across three generations. So at least I haven't seen a video of something like this happening. So I thought that was fun. So maybe a quick round of introductions. I'll start. We have Mr. Ramakrishnan, who is a very close friend's dad, who's 72. He's lived across multiple cities and countries. So Calcutta, Chennai, Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong. At least these are the ones that I remember. We've got Shom Sengupta, who's 45, lives in Gurgaon, has also lived across the country. And there's, of course, Aryan, who's 13 or 14, depending on when you ask him, and lives in Delhi there. So that's three distinct generations of cricket lovers for cricket, whether it's playing it or watching it. So maybe we can jump into question one, which is the eternal question for every Indian cricket fan. Who is the greatest Indian batsman of all time? And I'll give you three options just to make it easier. There's Gavaskar, there's Sachin, and there is, of course, Virat Kohli. So, Uncle, maybe you want to have a crack first?
Yeah, I would say that we have to divide it between one days and tests because they're quite different games. And if I say test matches, I still plug for Tendulkar. And for one day, definitely Virat Kohli. Because if you take different games, they got different styles, And whereas if you just say that you have to choose one person is a bit difficult. So I would go according to these two. And Gavaskar, of course, he has not had much experience in one day or T20. As a test player, of course, he was a great player, no doubt about it. But I'd still say Tendulkar a little ahead of him.
But would you say, Uncle, that given that Gavaskar faced the likes of Marshall holding Garner on a green top wicket, no helmet, would you still say that rate Sachin above him?
Yeah, I would still rate Sachin above him because Sachin had a longevity, you can say, longevity playing different type of bowlers, and he had played some very good fast bowling also. Whereas Sunil Gavaskar had he was very good in his team because he was probably the only one and not many players in his team. He could support the team all on his own. Whereas Tendulkar had some players behind him who could pull out the team in case of trouble. So I would say still I would put Tendulkar slightly ahead of Gavaskar in this range.
Sure. Shom?
Yeah, see, my generation grew up with Tendulkar. So it is impossible to separate the emotional attachment to the player from the technical prowess itself. So I agree with Uncle that you need to kind of look at it in different formats. Tendulkar's performance in ODI, I think, is significantly better than what it was in tests. He's played only one T20, so that doesn't really count. But the longevity of his career is fantastic. Gavaskar was, I think, for about 16, 17 years, but Tendulkar had the full 20. And from a very young age, right up to almost when he was 40 years, across fields, across stadiums, across conditions, across various strengths of his own team. So there was a time that when Tendulkar is out, team is out. The opposition significantly for India for a very long time. But having said that, the one place where I think that Gavaskar had more impact was, of course, in Test match, and at a time when India was just about finding its feet as far as the team is concerned. In those conditions, Gavaskar's impact on the team and the result was significant. So to Uncle's point, Tendulkar had a few other players backing him up, but for a very long period of time, Gavaskar really had nobody. So because Kapil joined, I think about 8 years after Gavaskar had made his debut. And the second factor that I think had a big role to play was just the kind of bats that they were using at that point in time. I mean, if you compare what Tendulkar used and what Gavaskar was using a twig for all practical purposes. So while Tendulkar started with a twig, his bat changed significantly towards the middle and the second part of his career. And that had a role to play as far as the number of runs he scored. But at an overall level for my generation, there is no doubt that it was Tendulkar who was the greatest Indian batsman, not just in terms of the numbers, but just the sheer impact that he had not only when he was playing, but in terms of inspiring people to kind of join cricket, come into the Indian cricket team and perform subsequently. So massive, massive impact on the game overall.
Interesting. So clearly two Tendulkar fans. Aryan, what about your view?
So see, I didn't see much of Tendulkar because I wasn't like interested during his times. But I saw some highlights, and I would say that Sachin would really turn the game and then really play well, and then he was a good number 4 for India too in Test cricket. And then I enjoy watching Sachin, but I also grew up with Kohli because of him being the captain, and then him taking India to the World Cup semi-final and then the Champions Trophy final, and his Test captaincy, because India have very rarely lost a series at home with his captaincy especially. So I would say probably I would like both of them, like Kohli and.
That's an interesting point around captaincy, because one thing that was a spectacular failure for Sachin was his captaincy. Everybody believed that he's going to make a good captain, but he just couldn't. Gavaskar was a very successful captain, and he took on captaincy at quite a young age, and he was very good at it. And we often forget that while his contribution in ODI has not been, as impactful as Sachin or Virat, he was our captain in the 1985 Benson and Hedges one-day international tournament, which I would rate as one of the most significant tournament wins for India. Almost at par with the World Cup at that point in time, because of the number of teams that were playing, the quality of teams that were there, and the location where it was played, which was Australia. So when we talk about greatest Indian batsman, obviously I would tend towards Sachin. But if you were to talk about between cricketers, just Gavaskar, Tendulkar, and Kohli as cricketers, there I find the contribution of Gavaskar, the cricketer, to be slightly higher than Tendulkar, the cricketer.
It's because of the people who we played with. I mean, they were not as. Yes. I mean, you have Vishwanath. You have all these four guys playing with Tendulkar. I mean, they supported him. But when Gavaskar played, he hardly had anybody around him. So as soon as he got out, then you felt that something going amiss here. I mean, when he in that match in Chennai, in Calcutta. I mean, he asked the captain, he said, he'll come 2 down. So they said, okay, you come 2 down. I mean, take some rest, come 2 down.
Yes.
First 2 balls, the guys went out and he came in. So when you come, the score is still 0.
That's right. That's right.
So my own thought is that I think that, when Gavaskar played for India, India's aim was to draw a test match and not to win a test match. So the mindset was quite different, when we started. We had just entered. And then to take on the likes of some of the bowlers I mentioned, no helmet, green top wicket completely there, and still, shine on that. I think at that time, remember, there was no money in cricket then. There was no real support system like you have now. So while I agree with Shom that probably I grew up with Sachin and he's my emotional favorite, but Gavaskar for really bringing India onto the world platform under the day 83, and that's our next question we can lead into, but that's what really got cricket going in India. there, and there's some credit for Gavaskar there. But anyway, I think this is an internal debate which will probably never get answered. And I see enough fights on Facebook, Uncle, including you. I see you having with your friends and family on this. So it's a fun thing to talk about. Great. Okay.
No, that's one thing. But our generation did grow up with Sachin, but Sachin started featuring in our lives maybe around 1990. After that century that he had in the England tour. Before that, he was a talent. I mean, you're still, you would hear of him, but you're not that emotionally invested. But till 90, it was all Gavaskar. Everybody was following, when is he going to cross Bradman's 29 centuries? Then it was the 10,000 run barrier and all of that. And to Shiv's point, I mean, he brought in the belief that the team can win. And he can make the team win single-handedly. The West Indies tour as well as the England tour, which India won, was largely on his back and not so much on the rest of the team. So you had 4 good bowlers in terms of the spinners who were there, but you still had to put up enough runs on the board. So those innings were spectacular.
I think also an interesting stat would be, if you think about Gavaskar's first ODI innings, which was the famous, I think, 36 runs of 60 overs that he scored.
Yes.
And if you think of, I think, what was his last test ODI match, which was against New Zealand, when he scored the fastest century in an ODI by an Indian, when he smashed, I remember, Danny Morrison and all these people there. It also tells you that he was a versatile player. Clearly, the need of the hour that time was to see off the new ball, seaming conditions. So maybe we never saw the attacking side of and he didn't play enough ODI cricket for us to really know what he could have done there. Okay, great. Nice. And maybe, something we touched upon earlier is, I think 2 of the probably biggest moments of Indian cricket were, of course, that famous afternoon or evening in June in 1983. And again, April 2011, Wankhede Stadium, which I think, most of us remember well. There. So what, according to you all, was really, what was your memory of these moments, if you had any memories, and which do you think was a bigger moment for India?
So I would say,
you want to go first?
Yeah. So I would say that definitely the 2011 World Cup final victory was more emotional, because all of us wanted to win the World Cup for Sachin, but the 1983 Cricket World Cup really got cricket into India, and then from then on, I'm sure India's one of the most cricket crazy countries in the world. So I would say the 1983 World Cup definitely inspired more people to play cricket and then become.
I agree with him. 83 was a turning moment in Indian cricket. When we had these guys going, they said, okay, after this few matches we lose and we'll go for shopping in London. In US. That's what they were thinking about. Then the innings came from Kapil Dev with the 170, which pulled the game out. I mean, they were going to lose the spot and they had to go home actually. And then he hit 170 and out of an impossible situation. So then they came back into the thing and they beat West Indies twice. They didn't beat them once. They beat them in the league stage also.
Yes.
And in the final, if you look at it, the most inspiring moment of the match was a catch which Kapil Dev took, actually. If he had dropped that catch, they was out of the game, sure. Yeah. So we have to also include Kapil Dev in this mix, of great players.
No, and he was a young captain. So again, clearly, 83 pretty much democratized cricket in India and popularized it, because that was the first time there was this massive win in a place like England. I mean, so we were notorious at that point in time of not being able to perform in foreign conditions. ODIs as a format had not really picked up that much. It was getting popular day by day, no doubt. India walked into 83 World Cup with some momentum. So they had been playing ODIs and they had kind of, won the try. They didn't win, but they won a couple of matches in the 1980 and 82 tri-series in Australia as well. But the 83 team was a very new one. So Shastri had been just grafted in. There was Shrikant, Binny, all these, Madan Lal, Yashpal, who were all-rounders who were effective in the England conditions. I mean, if you were to play them in India with their pace and non-seaming conditions, they were not that successful.
No doubt.
But Binny turned out to be the most successful and the highest wicket taker I think of the tournament, with his little bit of WWE movements in that seaming condition. And Uncle is right. I mean, we were almost out of the tournament. That innings of 175 really turned things around in terms of self-belief. And then, of course, that famous final.
One of my lasting memories of that final was the in-swinger from Balwinder Singh Sandhu to bowl. And I just remember his celebration. He was almost like just too stunned to celebrate himself.
Yeah. Correct. He still believes. I mean, there is a whole story around that where, Kapil had asked him to bowl out-swingers, but he decided to kind of bowl an in-swinger, and how that kind of got him the wicket.
But that was against the stroke, actually. Bowled the in-swinger.
Yeah. I mean, my memory of the 83 World Cup is kind of hazy, okay, because this was 1985. I was in class 3 at that point in time. 9 years old. So we had this Western TV, black and white Western TV, which you had to open the covers off. Okay? A small little thing. We were in Calcutta. And I remember my memory of 83 is my dad falling off the chair. When the wicket, so I started, I think, paying attention to the match from there. So when Greenwich got out, Dad in his celebration, tried to jump up, lost his footing, chair fell over, and he fell over. And I think in my mind, I was like, okay, something is happening. Something important is happening that I should pay attention to. And I don't remember the wickets or the cricket much. I mean, I remember it only much later on while watching the highlights. But I remember the entire colony coming out to celebrate the win. And that was, quite late in the night. So it was quite exciting for me that I'm able to get out of the house again in the night. But yeah, I mean, that was an amazing moment.
I think it's interesting if I have to think about my most memorable day of sport, I think it has to be the 2011 final. That night. And I remember going out, and I think Shom and me were together. We went out and celebrated all night. I mean, that was just a magical moment. But funnily, when you think about the 2011 World Cup, I think the one lasting memory is that 6 of Dhoni, right? That last ball 6. But if I ask you to think about 4 or 5 big memories from that World Cup, I think you might struggle to intuitively give an answer there. So India did, of course, we won it, and it was fantastic. And it was, like Aryan rightly said, it was about Sachin, and post-World Cup, it turned out about Yuvraj Singh, which none of us knew at that time that he was going. But yeah, I think 83 has to be special in many ways there. Okay, great. And, I want to go back to, since we're talking at multiple generations, I think in each of our generations, there is often a dominant team that we have. And maybe we can focus on Test cricket to keep it, easier. So, obviously, if I go back to the generation before mine, I mean, there was a West Indies, and then our generation was probably Australia. But Aryan, it's interesting in your generation. I mean, now, is there a dominant team, and what do you think about that?
So see, right now for the Test cricket, India was like currently coming first, but then Australia just like overtook them like a few weeks ago. Right now, there are 4 like very good teams. That means like the top 4, and it's England, India, Australia, and then the Kiwis. Out of those, England, Australia, and then India are like probably the best by paper. But like also the Kiwis could like upset you at times. Like sometimes they really upset you. So I would say it's a tough choice between India, England, and then Australia.
So is it fair to say that there is no one dominant team, Aryan, now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Uncle, what about, do you remember much of the West Indies back then? I mean, how dominant were they?
Oh, they were very dominant. I mean, if you take it from 76 onwards or before that, I mean, from that time, they had all the fast bowlers and the great opening, great batsmen, middle order batsmen opening. I mean, they completely dominated all the teams. There's no No way that any team came near them. So I think they were a real, if you think of call a dominating team, that West Indies was the best, even among all formats, or even up to today. You know, if they a team which dominates a whole series and all the teams, you know. I mean, today you can say that Australia, I mean, England won the World Cup, but then you can't say they're the best team also. But that time there's no question about it. Although India beat them in that World Cup, it was a, I mean, I won't call it a fluke. It was an upset, complete upset, and it was due to a few players coming together and making it. Yeah. So, and there's overconfidence of Richards. I mean, hitting.
That was the
All
turning
the 3 4s he hit in the previous over. He tried again in the next week. He had enough time to make the runs, but he went for it like a madman. You know, so you can also call it overconfidence on their part.
That's interesting. I just remember that in the post-match ceremony, when they were having a conversation with Kapil and Lloyd, so the presenter asked that, you know, what happened? I mean, you guys were really going really well, and where did you lose it? And Kapil said that, well, I think it was the Richards wicket, because he was trying to make 184 in 30 overs and not 60.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So the reason that was when we got his wicket and when he was hitting, we kind of felt that if we can make him continue to do that, then we will get his wicket, and that was what really happened. And Lloyd concurred.
That's right.
One of the downsides of this lockdown is I'm really missing watching the movie. It should have been released. I think it was due to get
Yeah,
released.
I know.
Yeah.
Some of the photographs of that were unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean the one that he has got of the Nataraj shot, it is iconic in its own right. I mean, he's done a phenomenal job of really getting it right.
Yeah, true. Okay. Let's talk.
Sorry, on dominant teams. I mean, of course, our generation, it was Australia. They call it once in a generation team. I mean, I think right down to the 11th player, they were the best in the game at that point in time. West Indies had always a few players that didn't become legends. I mean, Ford Backus was there, and Larry Holmes is legendish.
Yes.
Not really legend, and Gus Logie is somewhere in the middle. But the Australian team in the middle, I mean, right from their openers of Hayden, Gilchrist to Mark Waugh, Steve Waugh, I mean, each one of them were a legend in their own right. And what a phenomenal team that changed the rules of the game. The fielding standards they brought in, the captaincy they brought in, the aggressiveness and competitiveness. I mean, people remember the aggressiveness, but I much rather put the lens of competitiveness that they brought in. They were unbeatable for a longer period than even the West Indies team. And they pulled up the standards of the game overall. So West Indies, of course, contributed a lot to the flair of the game. But I think Australia really contributed to the quality of preparation and quality of skills that the game has seen eventually. And now it's a toss-up. I mean, right now, there is no one team that is completely dominant. I think most teams are protecting their records in their home grounds. So the battle has become about whom can you defeat in their own, home country. England is almost impenetrable. India has been protecting its home ground records really well. Australia has always been a challenge at home. So the guys who will emerge dominant are the people who perform well overseas.
Yeah. So I think what we're referring to is more Test cricket, right? That we see this dominance at home. Think about, and maybe that's the next segment, is around the different forms of cricket and what do we believe? So, I mean, a lot of us grew up with Test cricket, of course, and then we had ODIs, and now, T20 is the flavor of the day, and who knows what will come next after that. But if there is a favorite format, and there's, an emotional side of this, and then there is a practical side of, looking at, which is the best format that we have, all things considered. Aryan, what is your view about that?
So, definitely, T20 cricket, people are really enjoying it. Also, schools are now playing mainly only T20 cricket. But like I would still say Test cricket's better because like it's more competing, because like it like takes time to like so like see, every sport has to be challenging. So like see, for example, the batsmen need some time to like settle down, because and then the bowlers will have to like put them with some trouble, and then like definitely there's more swing, and then definitely it's more challenging for both the bowlers and the batsmen in like Test cricket. So I would say you have to like earn your wicket or like earn runs. So like I would say Test cricket's better.
Very interesting. I wouldn't have expected this from this generation.
Yeah, I thought that this generation is going to be on the T20 camp very strongly.
I think I already know the answers of what the other two are going to say. Uncle, I'd love to hear what you have to say on this.
No, I'd say, I mean, T20 is like, you know, I was coming home from Chennai to Calcutta, and on the while checking into the flight, I met with two umpires. I forget the name now. So one of them said, I asked him, what's the difference between these three formats? So he said, T20 you can win with one player. With 50-day cricket, you need two players. But cricket, you need four players at least to win a test.
Great
so
point.
this is the difference between the three formats.
That's a brilliant
I think Ian Gold, if I'm not
like so like also like for example, whenever like India tours like somewhere like England, South Africa, mainly like you see that like England, when we told them Virat Kohli was like our backbone, that's why we lost. Australia, we did get lucky, but like Cheteshwar Pujara was the main one who like helped us win the series in Australia. And then like and then like so like definitely India doesn't like have 2-3 vital players to like win a test match. So like whenever like we tour, for example, every like the top order like Mayank Agarwal, Virat Kohli, Pujara, all of them have to step up whenever like we go, because then India won't be consistent overseas.
Sure.
India is more a bowling side. I mean, the bowlers are doing the dominance now.
Very true.
Yeah, 300 plus, they're sure to win you the test or get you very near the winning anyway. So I think a bowling side is not required to get 500 runs or 600.
Which was unimaginable. I mean, a few years ago, it was completely the reverse there. So
and especially the pitch bowling side. I mean, they are calling Indian bowling the best pace attack in the world now. So, I mean, but imagine, you know, we have 4 fast bowlers and then we have 4 sitting in the dugout, you know.
True. Sure.
Which is another big change that has happened. I mean, I remember in the mid-90s, there was very little difference between our test team and our ODI team. It was the same bunch who was going across formats. Now the ODI team is significantly different from the test team, which is significantly different from even the T20 game. So the pool of players who have been able to represent India meaningfully, not like the 90s where some of the names when you see and some of the performances when you see of the 90s people who represented India, they still surprise you that how, you know, why was the team opened up, why was a slot opened up for this person in the team. But yeah, I mean, for me, again, test cricket, of course, it's the difference between filter coffee and instant coffee, right? So filter coffee is what you really savor for the love of coffee. And test cricket does that. And thankfully now the number of results which are there in test cricket is significantly higher than what it used to be even a decade back. It would often result in an insipid draw, and that's what was kind of leading people to move away from it. But now I think increasingly you get more test matches with results in them. So it's interesting to watch, and the game unfolds in a particular way. T20 is entertaining, but it is still I think the skills are still evolving, and it's fast paced and everything. But cricket is test cricket for me, clearly.
I think one day is more dominated towards batsmen. It doesn't give them equality. You know?
Yeah.
So if you can allow them to spread the field around more, and give the best bowlers a better chance, you know.
Correct.
All overs and go home. So
I think the format that's under big danger is ODI, because it's kind of here nor there in a way. I mean, it's not super fast paced and yet it's not clearly slow. Of course, when an ODI towards the end builds up, but that middle period of an ODI, I think is can be draining at times. There, and I think that's the format. If I have to take a bet and say which format will die or will go down, I think it would be the ODI format more than I think T20 or Test. I think the purists will always love Test cricket, and I think T20 is just commercially more practical.
Yes, got the crowds back into the stadium after a long time. Yeah. And to be fair to T20, I think it has added on to the skill set of cricketers. So, which has traveled across formats, by the way. So there is it's not that the T20 skills have got limited only to that format. They have walked into ODI for sure. And even in Test cricket, you are seeing far more innovative shots, far more variations in bowling than you would actually see till some time ago.
So Aryan, if you were to one day maybe make your debut for India 5-6 years from now, would you rather make your debut in Test cricket or T20?
Very soon.
So see, obviously I can't choose, like that's the selector's point of view, but like definitely Test cricket will like be like more fun to play, but like even like T20 cricket, like you'll be like under pressure because like you'll have to hit the ball almost like every ball, because like see, I'm not a batsman type of person who like I just come out mainly for like the last 2-3 overs of like every game. So like I would say I would definitely debut for maybe Test cricket, though it'll be pretty competing to play.
Brilliant. Right. Couple of questions to wrap up. I think a lot of us are privileged to have watched a lot of cricket and even played some cricket, you know, all over. But any favorite cricket grounds that we have? Maybe Aryan, you want to go first?
So see, I've been to like 10-15 grounds. Out of those, I would say the best is obviously Lords to me, because like only by not by like the watching, but like I remember we got pretty lucky with the JP Morgan event. So like we were called, and then I like played over there, and then I just had a Lord's day out technically, and then just rested in the pavilion. And then also like I like the facilities in Lords, so I would say Lords is my favorite ground.
Do you remember any of the cricketers you met that day?
Yeah, I think I met Graham Smith. I'll just show you during the video. I met Graham Smith. I met Courtney Walsh. I can't pronounce his name. I met Wasim Akram, and I'm forgetting right now, but I think I also met Andrew Strauss. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Uncle?
Well, I mean, sentimentally, I prefer Kolkata, Eden Gardens, because I've seen a lot of my cricket there. But for facilities and for other things, definitely Lords. I mean, the organization is so good, you know. When the players come, when the spectators are coming in during an over, they're not allowed to come into the thing. They just stop at the gate.
Yeah.
And then when the over is finished, automatically they're allowed to go and get into the seats.
Yeah.
So there's no disruption. But in Calcutta, one guy's climbing over your shoulder.
So like,
and in the old days in the cement seats, you had hardly any place between your leg and the front seat. You know? There was grazing against your foot, and the back rest was also cement. So there's no way that you could go anywhere unless the interval break. So it's so well organized and very, it's just a pleasure to walk around Lords. You know, just walk around and see the things, and it's a fantastic ground.
So Aryan,
yeah. So like for example, in like Ferozshah Kotla, the really bad thing is that like I have to leave the game 10 minutes early, because then I know that like the whole ground, which is about like 35,000 people coming in the same exit area, and then like we'll be waiting for like an hour for the cars to come.
That's also part of the fun in it.
Really tough to get out of Ferozshah Kotla.
Shom, any favorite ground?
I mean, Eden Gardens, head and shoulders. Okay, so one, I haven't been to any ground outside of India. Okay, so all the cricket that I've seen in the stadiums has only been in India. So I don't have anything to compare it with. But even if I'm sure that Lords will be a fantastic experience, and the Adelaide will be beautiful and very comfortable and all of that. But from 1983. December, when West Indies came into India, that was the first time I went into a cricket stadium, only to see Gavaskar get out on the first ball.
Yeah.
And I remember the energy of the place, because there were some 75, 80,000 people inside, there were people outside. It was chaos, but it was 83. I was a kid. So that chaos was fun for me, because it was like a big carnival. And like Uncle said, there were cement seats with some numbers. So you spread out your newspaper. You always used to carry.
No place for you to get in that.
Exactly, it's very narrow. I mean, so I was a skinny little chap, so I could wiggle around. But I remember Dad and everybody else. There was a little bit of people are accommodating, but it is not comfortable. So you put down your newspapers, take out your cucumber sandwiches, because that's what you have during the lunch and everything, and you watch Test cricket. I was really short, so I had to stand up and see most of the match, because people would get up and they would be roaring, but it was madness. From there on, right from the 87 World Cup final to a lot of matches that Shiv and I have seen together in Eden Gardens, the emotions associated with them, the experience associated with them, I don't think anything else can compare. So unless I am back with my friends into a very high-powered match, sitting in Lords and maybe winning the World Cup, that can compare to some of those memories that have been built in Eden Gardens. So for me, Eden Gardens, the inside, the outside, the people, the stands, the matches, they carry many rich memories.
What makes it great are the people who are attending that ground, that match. They're all real cricket lovers. If you go to a test match in Bombay or see a game in Bombay, half the guys are there to show themselves they are on the ground.
Exactly.
They'll have to pose and the photograph, nothing. But these guys are all lovers, cricket lovers, except in the pavilion. Everywhere else is fully cricket lovers.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, I got a ticket once to sit in the pavilion. Then I told my brother-in-law, I don't want to sit here. I want to go back to the crowd. I want to sit opposite side, where there's crowd and there's excitement and there's comments. So
exactly, the comments, the debating. It is a live show. I mean, there is as much of a sport happening in the stands as there is on that pitch over there. And to your point, I remember in Mohali, I had gone to see a match, and I was very distressed to hear a comment. I think about 45 minutes into the match, when a person said, "Oh, are they bowling from both sides?"
Yeah.
So, and I was like, "Why are you here?"
This comment was actually done by my nephew. I was forced to take him to the match, and he's all the time reading the comics there. You'll miss the next wicket is going. Watch it. He's saying, when the wicket goes, you rewind for me.
So funnily for us, I think we were lucky that last 2-3 years, I think Aryan and me got, we did a couple of cricket trips in England. And before I'd done that, I would completely agree, Shom, with what you said, with just the adrenaline. But now, and maybe as you've grown up, you get a little spoiled. But
yeah,
I'm never a big live cricket person. Because I like enjoying the technicalities of the game when you watch. But I think watching cricket in England, you feel you're on the ground. You can hear the ball, you can hear the bat, sound, and just the crowd. It's knowledgeable, but I think just the way it's organized, I think is just phenomenal. There, I think from a spectator point of view to watch cricket, again, I haven't had a chance. So funnily, one of the prettiest grounds I've ever seen is I went for a cricket to Portugal in 2002. This is when I was playing in London, and we had a match, and I still remember this beautiful cricket ground in Portugal, which I didn't know, and I still don't know what cricket they play, but I remember that there. So interesting. Last question, and anyone can answer. Is there any, we've all played cricket in some form. None of us have made it to any serious level of cricket, but we've all played and we've all dreamt of one day becoming, cricketers, at least. They're like, I suspect, like every Indian has. But any funny or memorable moments when you've been on the field playing? Uncle, maybe you?
Yeah, I mean, I remember India was playing. I mean, India was playing England, and in Lords somewhere, and I was not there. But this guy was arrested for stealing socks. Indian player. What's his name? Naik was arrested for stealing socks. So then he was, of course, released. Then the next time when he came to Calcutta, I went to see the game, and he was playing there. And so somebody hit the ball and it went past him. I mean, went past him and went between his legs. So then the crowd from just behind me got up and said, "Arey, put the ball in the socks, he'll catch it." He'll definitely catch it. I mean, the sense of humor among this Calcutta crowd is unparalleled.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Aryan, any memories that you have maybe while playing cricket?
So like, see, I don't like remember much of funny cricket like while watching, but like while playing, I remember there was a player. So like there was a player in like our team. We were like fielding. He was fielding at mid-on, and then the batsman hit a straight drive, and then his pants were loose. So like while he was chasing the ball, his pants were on his knees. So like we all had a laugh about it, and like then it was pretty embarrassing for him. Yeah.
Great. Shom, I think you took your cricket seriously, or did you also have?
I took my cricket seriously, but during the wrong age. Okay, so I remember so I used to play quite a lot during my college days and even after that. But once I started working, I had stopped. And cricket is a perishable skill. I mean, you have to keep practicing. But somehow I thought that I had all the skills which I possessed as a teenager during a corporate game. And so we were playing versus one of the other corporates, and I'm not a batsman. Okay, so I cannot bat. So I think I was the 8th wicket or the 9th wicket when I kind of walked in. But because I take it very seriously, I had my badge, I had every piece of equipment, helmet, this, that, all of that. So I came out like a professional, okay, only to kind of take guard and then miss the first 3 deliveries. I mean, I just couldn't see the ball. And it was becoming embarrassing. So in the sense that even the runners and everybody was saying, just run. Forget about swinging your bat, just run. And I thought that the best thing to do is to get myself run out. So the next ball, and remember, I'm wearing everything. So pad, guard, leg guard, everything. Somehow something touched somewhere, and I said that, okay, I will just make an attempt and then kind of, fall short of the crease. So I hit it, and the guy kind of zipped past, and because I'm not used to all of that anymore, I was clunking along. And I said, let me at least show a decentish effort of reaching the crease. So I dived. So the distance I thought I will cover with the dive was half of what I managed to achieve. So the dive, which was supposed to take me near the crease, I was still 2 feet away from it. So what it felt like is that this guy basically just fell over. And then the fielder missed the wicket.
Oh.
So then I had to crawl because you can't lie there. So I had to crawl through the rest of the pitch and reach so not only was I not out, I was covered in mud, embarrassed. All the guards and everything were in a different place altogether. And I had to play like that for 2 more overs before I could get back into my own dugout. A horrible experience. Horrible experience.
My early memories of cricket were actually, funnily, not on a cricket ground. They were with this gentleman sitting behind Uncle Arjun, who's been hiding through the video. There in our room, in our bedroom, and we would play. And of course, my mother would invariably be firing Arjun and me because we would keep breaking these the lights in our room, and play would stop because we had a dog, Devil, who was a big black Alsatian, and he would just decide to come and sit in the middle of the room. And he was not someone you could just easily move. So it would pretty much be dog stop play, and that was the end of the day's play there. So that was fun.
So guys, it was a lot of fun. I genuinely enjoyed this talk. I know it was long, but I hope you enjoyed the video. So guys, stay safe from COVID and please do like, share and subscribe.